Hey, it's John Gafford from the Escaping the Drift podcast. And big news, my new book, Escaping the Drift, is coming out November the 11th. You can pre-order it right now at thejohngafford.com. There are tons of bonuses, tons of giveaways. Get the book. If you are somebody that feels like you might be drifting along, this is for you. If you know somebody that feels like they might be drifting along, this is for you. Available everywhere, all bookstores, everywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, the whole 9 yards. But pick your copy up right now at thejohngafford.com and get a bunch of the awesome bonuses I've thrown out, because I promise you, I put my heart and soul into this thing. I want it to help you change your life. Pick it up everywhere. Oh, this is the wrap. This is the wrap up. Here we go. Bring it home. Bring it back. Look at that, man.
We're coming back.
This dude's been on stage before. You can tell. That's a wrap up. And now, Escaping the Drift, the show designed to get you from where you are to where you want to be. I'm John Gafford, and I have a knack for getting extraordinary achievers to drop their secrets to help you on a path to greatness. So stop drifting along, escape the drift, and it's time to start right now. Back again for another episode of the podcast. Like it says in the opening, man, gets you from where you are to where you want to be. And today, live in the studio, man, this is going to be some brain power. You might need a thesaurus for this one, a dictionary. I don't know. You're going to need a textbook, some graphs, some charts. In the studio today, we have the founder and CEO of Senteo. He is one of the finest international business consultants on earth. And we are lucky to hear from him today how AI is going to affect businesses going forward and the value of the relationship currency and why you need to place some value on it. Guys, welcome to the studio. This is Michael Ruckman. Michael.
Hi.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good.
Thanks for coming.
It's a little hot outside.
Thanks for coming. It is hot. It is hot outside. A little bit of a sidebar. Michael's one of my favorite clients, so we're glad to have him here in the studio. He was nice enough. We've been talking about doing this for years, and I finally coerced him into coming over to the studio, which is great. So Michael's like for those, you're going to get to know him today. Hopefully as good as I do. He's like an international man of mystery. I love this. It's great. So he has done some amazingly cool things. And when we started talking about, we were playing golf and we started talking about AI and how companies are just implementing it all wrong, I was so fascinated by it. I was like, dude, you got to come on. We got to talk about this. So first of all, let's talk about what gives you the credentials to even have an opinion on this. Let's talk about who you are a little bit that way.
Okay. Well, I started my career. I wanted to go to medical school and ended up being told that wasn't going to happen because as a white middle-class male in California, there weren't enough spaces for people like me. So I went to Spain to learn Spanish and never came back. Spent most of my career outside of the U.S. I've spent most of my life outside of the U.S. I've worked in probably, let's say, over 40 different countries. I speak 4 languages, 3 of them fluently, one of them kind of advanced. I struggle through Czech, but there wasn't really a great reason to continue learning Czech. So it's kind of funny. I learned Spanish and I thought, okay, there's, roughly 500 million people that speak Spanish in the world. So I'm
going to use this.
Very useful, right? Yeah. And especially, here with anybody that's doing any work anywhere, you can speak Spanish. Then, I moved to the Czech Republic. The company that I was working for, PricewaterhouseCoopers, moved me to the Czech Republic. And I thought, God, I'm learning this language. There's only like 10 million people that speak this language. Yeah. It's a waste of time.
And if I leave, I'm not coming back. The weather's brutal.
But then I moved to Russia, and it turns out Czech is a Slavic-based language. Russian's a Slavic-based language. So it actually was very useful in learning Russian. So I'm fluent in English, Spanish, and Russian. And I kind of have made a career out of working in those countries.
It was fascinating because when we first met, you had just come back from an extended stay in Russia, working there in the banking industry, because you were essentially trying to catch their 1970s banking industry up to the standards that we have today, which I thought was fascinating. What was it like? I mean, before we even get into this stuff, like what was it really like being an American living in Russia at that time?
At the time, it was great. Let me break that into a couple different categories. So one of them could be like quality of life as an expat in Russia. So there were things that were just unbelievable. The things that you would go like, wow, this is awesome. Like for a little bit of money, you could do things that you would never do in other countries. But there was also, at that time in the early 2000s in Russia, they consider the 90s like the Wild East. And in the early 2000s, things were calming down a bit, but still you could pretty much be killed any day. Not because somebody was going to kill you,
right.
Because you might fall into like an open manhole, or, an icicle might fall off the roof of a building and, stab you and kill you or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just like random shit that could possibly kill you.
KGB and their magic icicles falling off of buildings.
Or you got in a gypsy cab and the gypsy cab got in a wreck, So at that point, there were no taxi companies in Russia. So it was just like paid hitchhiking. You would stick your arm out. Any random person would stop to give you a ride. You negotiate a price. You get in the car and you go. So I got rides from like dump trucks, fire trucks, army trucks, so I mean, it was interesting to be there because
it was like Uber before. It was like they were ahead of their time. They were ahead of their time.
They were ahead of their time. Just no app, right? So it was an interesting time to be there. I got moved there to essentially modernize the banking system, and I had been doing. Most of my career up until then was large scale program and change management. So project management, change management, large changes in large organizations. And you start learning things about organizational behavior and corporate culture and things like that the minute you try to change anything in a big company. So I became kind of skilled in this strategic or let's say tactical planning of how you guide change in organizations. There are a lot of people, most people like myself who've spent careers involved in change, large scale change in companies will tell you that the more you try to manage change, the less manageable it becomes. It's about creating the environment that's conducive to change. So you start dealing with a lot of human nature, human decisioning, things like that. And that is largely what I would segue into artificial intelligence.
Okay, well, hang on a second. Let's back up because that's interesting to me. So fostering an environment that is conducive to change.
Yeah.
So I just, for some reason, I'm just thinking about margin accounting. That's just done it this way her whole life. And this is just how I do it. And I don't care about the new software and it's stupid. Yeah. And this is just what we do. How do you walk in, especially as a consultant, you're not there, you're one of the Bobs. Yeah. How do you walk in and turn that around? Does Marge just go, or is there a way to reprogram Marge?
Okay, there's a couple of things to understand here. One of them is human nature, right, and human decisioning. So there's been years and years and years, probably the last 100 years or so of studying the mathematics behind how humans take decisions. Largely, how our brains work hasn't changed that much in terms of human decisioning for the last 50,000 years, maybe 100,000 years, depending on which theory you want to believe. But our brains developed from the primitive, how do we survive, to emotional reasoning, which is how do we feel, how do we react to things, do we have empathy or not, and so on, and then rational thinking. And so most decisions are made in that primitive or emotional reasoning state. They're not made by rational. I mean, there's a gajillion examples. We know we shouldn't buy the shoes because we have a budget, but God, those shoes look so good, and then we feel bad. Or we know we shouldn't eat the chocolate cake because we're on a diet and only X number of calories today, but man, I had a rough day, so I deserve it. I deserve the cake. Or
eat your feelings, Michael. You eat your feelings.
Totally. So, I'm an emotional eater.
Eat your feelings.
Stress eater right here. But so that kind of thing is interesting. So to understand that, you also look at things like Geoffrey Moore, the law of diffusion of innovation. So there's 2.5% of the population that are innovators, people that see the world not the way it is, but the way it should be, and they're willing to initiate some change. There's about 13.5% of people that are early adopters. Those are people that are ready to follow some new idea, even without proof that it would be successful.
Just because they like the shiny new thing.
Then you get 18.5% of people that are 36.5% of people that are.
I'm checking these stats. Yeah, you better come correct.
If it doesn't add up at the end, I may
That's
be off.
147% of people,
like a percentage or something. But it's like 36% roughly of people that are the early majority, 36% that are the late majority, and then the rest are called laggards. Okay. So Simon Sinek uses the example also where he talks about the first ones are the ones that are waiting outside the Apple store overnight to get the new iPhone, right? The early adopters are the ones that get it before the end of the year. The early majority are getting them, first half of next year. The late majority are the ones that have an iPhone 14 when there's an iPhone 16 out, and the laggards are the ones that are still flipping their Motorola Razr or whatever,
bringing the green text bubble to the text chains.
Exactly. So those are the things. So when you're looking at change in a company, margin accounting, she could be an innovator and we don't know it, but she could be an innovator in some different part of her life, right? So I'm an innovator when it comes to technology. I love it, right? I love whatever the newest, shiniest, brightest thing is out there. But if you look at other areas of my life, I'm fairly conservative. So I might be a laggard somewhere else. So it's difficult to identify these people. And if you're driving change,
so you're not necessarily pigeonholed as one person.
No, you can't. No, there's different areas of your life. So you might be an innovator when it comes to technology, and when it comes to religion, you might be massively conservative, or something like that. Or when it comes to family values, or something like that. So people are different in different ways, and the only way you can really find this, so you can't walk into a company and say, "I need all the innovators because we're going to drive change." Right? The innovators are great because they help you to detail your concepts. Right, the early majority are great for pilot projects. Right, the early adopters are great for pilot projects. The early majority are great for rolling things out. Then you have the other 50% of people in your company that are you just need them out of the way because they're just going to cause problems. The late majority, they're the doubters. Like, oh, I don't know, our company, I don't know, our city, it's not going to work. I don't know, is this the right time? Or whatever, and they'll just doubt. Yeah.
Debbie Downer.
Yeah, and then the laggards are the ones that'll sabotage. So if margin accounting is a laggard, she will do everything possible to block that change. And as humans, we don't love change, right? So we don't go out seeking change. Those are weird people, right? We like things to be very kind of normal and consistent and predictable and so on. That's great for us. I have my evening routine with sugar-free gummy bears where I arrange them by color and by odd and even. I have a little bit of OCD. So,
I was okay. That's I don't think that's okay.
Oh God, I had a friend come over recently and he came out and I had my gummy bears out on the counter and he was like, "What is going on here?" So,
you're like, no, they have to point due north. Due north.
Yeah.
Due north.
We like things that are predictable in life. But,
okay. All right. I feel like we should go play blackjack after this. I feel like you'd be just ruthless
I'm
at this.
pretty good at blackjack.
I feel like you would be. No, Black King. There's a Black King. Anyway. All right. So margin accounting, let's say she's a saboteur in a company. Mm-hmm. What do we just get rid of her? Or is there a way to counsel her off? Or is that just who she is?
She might be valuable, so she might be great, not involved in some change project. I mean, there's always room for people in companies. So, I mean, it was very rare for me in any change project to walk in and say, we need to fire a bunch of people. It was always like, let's get the people that are into this and let's figure out. And so there's the textbook, kind of change project where you build a case for change and you promote it and you do a roadshow in the company and you figure out who
you drop the new logo that looks exactly the same, but it's $2 million worth of dev on it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you figure out who's on board and you bring them on to detail and pilot things and you show your successes and you roll out and whatever, and you avoid the people that are going to be your detractors and your saboteurs. But in general, you go with, who's on board and you move with who's on board. It's difficult to do that in any company where you just are going to walk in and say, we're going to fire people because you don't know if you're firing the right people.
Yeah. And I also think now especially after COVID, where there's a lot of remote people, like it must be incredibly difficult to move some of that stuff because you have no idea who you're dealing with and you don't know what they're saying in the DMs. Yeah. No, you just don't know that there's no like look across the cubicles and look at the coffee machine and you see like that probably isn't a good conversation. Yeah. That looks like it's not going my way. It must be incredibly hard to do that now.
Yeah, there's a professor at a university in Holland who is Thies Homan. I think his name is, and he always talks about the onstage, offstage of driving change. So he'll say like, there's the leader that's out there going like, we're going north, and everybody's like, yeah, north. And then, when they're around the cooler or, having a cigarette somewhere or whatever, they're like, I don't know, north is that? Yeah. Are we northwest? Are we more east? Or like, what are we doing? And so there's always this kind of, onstage support, especially if you have an authoritarian leader that, nobody's going to stand up in front of everyone and go, I don't know. If north is the right way,
what qualities, if you're a change leader, not a consultant, obviously, but you're a leader of a company, what makes a good leader through times of change?
Well, I'll give you a little.
And what makes a bad leader?
I'll give you a little story around that. Yeah, so I had a project a few years ago where the CEO was a friend. And turns out I had worked in that company. I won't mention the name of the company, but I had worked in that company before. And the CEO was on my team. And then he grew up and I left the company. He grew up and became the CEO. And he said, we need like massive change here. Can you come in and be the change leader? And I said, it's great, but you have to understand that, the CEO is essentially the change leader.
You can't just hide your office.
You can outsource that to me, but you need to make sure that you're supporting, so I'll come to you and I'll say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And you need to make sure that you're going to stand behind every single thing. Otherwise you render me useless in that role.
It's like when Michael Scott, when he sent Dwight out to get the new insurance plan done. You do it. I want to do it.
Yeah. So in essence, if the CEO is not the change leader and he's going to outsource it to somebody, he needs to trust that person enough to say, hey, that what he says goes. I had another project a number of years ago in Ukraine, of all places. And it was the CEO of a bank, and he got the whole management team together and he said, hey, listen, if Michael says we're doing something, we're doing it.
That's it.
You can trust that he's already come to me, he's already cleared it, and he has my okay that we're doing this stuff. And I literally went to the guy every morning and said, these are the things I'm going to talk to people about today. And I went and talked to people, and about the first 3 or 4 months, they would all go behind the scenes and go, Michael told us we're going to do this. And he's like, hey, I told you, that if it comes from Michael, it's coming from me.
Yeah.
And after that, everything was smooth. But it changes like a weird thing.
Well, how challenging was it for you to walk into these companies as the unknown and have people listen to that?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this dude is all of a sudden here telling us what was going to happen and how it's going to go. How tough was that of a role for you? And what makes you built that makes you able to do that?
It's almost easier to be the person from the outside. And once people inside are too comfortable with you, you lose your power as a change agent. So it's a bizarre, there's like a little conundrum there.
Little fear.
You cross a barrier and you're no longer as effective. So most companies are poor at change. So most companies aren't designed for change.
Is that why companies bring in consultants to do this stuff instead of just trying to do internally?
And most companies would be better off bringing in external coordination of change versus trying to do it internally, if it's not in the DNA of the corporate culture. So if you look at, and I have a friend whose son is in business school right now in Barcelona, and about 7-8 months ago, I said, dude, please send me what they're teaching you, because I just want to check stuff out. They're still teaching classical management theory. Classical management theory was 120 years ago. Roughly 120 years ago. Yeah. There's 3 fathers of classical management theory, and they all had slightly different approaches. One of them was top down. You govern business the same way you govern government. You have laws, you patrol, you punish those that don't abide by the standards or the rules or whatever. You have Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was bottom up. He believed that you could find the best process for anything and then build upwards to build controls and quality features into a business. And then you had Henri Fayol, a Frenchman, who was the first one that came up with the concept of team spirit. It was like number 16 or 18 on his list of priorities, but at least he had something in there.
We care if you're happy. Not really 16. We care if you're happy.
But if you look at when they were thinking up classical management theory, it was the early 1900s. They were dealing with the issues of
Industrial Revolution.
Well, they were dealing with the issues of how do we manage mass production, and what classical management theory is largely about. And I would say, I'll take a guess, but I'm going to guess that 90% of businesses operate based on the principles of classical management theory today, but it was designed for stability in production environments. And it was designed for the production lines where people are doing, really monotonous, redundant things all day long, and they had to keep people motivated. Well, that's very different today. Like, humans aren't putting stuff together anymore. It's, machines and robots and so on. And so business is very different. The other thing, 120 years ago, a typical business development cycle, or a typical period of time that was enough for customers to change their needs, preferences, and behavior, could have been 10, 20, 30 years. Well, now, if you're not coming up with something new every 6 to 12 months, you're stagnant. Yeah. You're irrelevant in your customers' eyes, because needs, preferences, and behavior are changing so fast today. So these business cycles where business was designed for stability, well, now we need business to be adaptive. We need business to be responsive to changes in needs, preferences, and behavior.
Yeah, that is the only currency that's respected, is innovation. That's it. Yeah. What are we doing tomorrow?
Well, okay, if Apple didn't come out with a new iPhone every year, or if Samsung didn't come out with a new television every year, their market share of sales would just plummet. Yeah. It would be insane, And sometimes they're regurgitating, they're thinking up new words for the same crap.
Yeah.
Right?
But this one's titanium.
Brilliant. Yeah. Love it. And I needed that.
Yes, because it felt so heavy in my pocket the other way.
Oh, couldn't live without it.
Couldn't live without it. It's titanium. Well, it's so interesting you say that, because as we move to the new economy, not only this is what we call segue in the podcast business. Right? It's hard segue. Because you're talking about, so as you talk about manufacturing, we're no longer manufacturing on the lines, more and more work is now being done by AI
and robots.
That's a segment, right? Yeah. So this is kind of what you've really spent the last 2-3 years leaning into, is this.
I haven't. So what's funny is I talk a lot about AI. I'm talking about it constantly. I'm writing articles on it constantly, but I'm a bit of a strange one, because I'm writing on AI not from the standpoint of the technology, but the application of the technology into business context. And how do businesses extract the value from AI? And there's a lot of really strange things happening, right? So you look around the world where they go, oh, we're going to replace, X hundreds of thousands of employees with AI agents. Well, brilliant. Okay, but how you do that, it needs to be represented in the change that's in the business environment. And unfortunately, there's two big factors that are influencing that. One, the end user is still a human. And that's likely to be for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, hopefully AI doesn't, decide that we're useless and get rid of us. But for the foreseeable future, the end users will still be humans, right? And the people making the decisions, the people managing businesses and the shareholders of businesses are still humans, right? So AI it's not like it's just going to, randomly change everything by itself. It needs to be implemented into the context of how we create value as a business. And I think that's something that a lot of businesses are missing. They're just overlooking it.
Well, I think right now they're looking at as a cost cutting instead of a quality improvement.
Yeah.
It's not, well, I think it's certain things. Now, it's a toss up. Would I rather talk to an AI customer service rep that I can clearly understand, even though there's that weird drop off? It's got it. I mean, okay. Yeah. Because I can understand I'm sorry. Got it.
I didn't get that.
Right. Would I rather talk to that, or would I rather talk to the person that I can't understand at all on the other side of the earth?
Yeah.
Right. I think right now most corporations or companies are so focused on cost savings. How do we use AI to cost save? So they're eliminating those low hanging jobs. But unfortunately, like you just said, those low hanging jobs are the ones where that's where you get a chance to impact the customer experience the greatest.
Yeah.
I think, look at the grocery store, right? Yes, you don't want a super chatty cashier, but I'd much rather have somebody bring up my groceries and smile at me, and then have somebody bag them and ask me if they can push it out, than me walk over and have to scan everything and deal with those bags and, this thing jammed or whatever else. But
I didn't come here to work.
I don't want to work, right? I don't want to do that, right? So, but I think, that's a very small example of that. And I think you're seeing that at great scale in big companies.
Yeah. Let me take one step back.
Yeah.
If you look at there's a kind of prediction that I made about a year ago, where I was doing an interview and somebody asked me, if the last 20 years was about digital transformation, what do you think the next 20 years is? Is it about AI transformation, or is it AI taking over things? And I said, no. My prediction would be that if the last 20 years was about digital transformation and digitizing business, then the next, let's say, at least 8 to 10 years at a minimum is going to be about organizational transformation, because companies are not ready for the things that are happening. Now, I wrote an article a few years ago. They were asking me, it was a Middle East Council of Shopping Centers, and they were asking me to talk about digital in retail. And I said, the majority of applications of digitizing business happened in the beginning along the lines of, how do we create more efficiency? How do we lower cost? And unfortunately, there's a small window of opportunity there. It gets to a point where you can't make things any faster, any cheaper, and so on. So you've got this kind of limit of benefit there. And when companies started looking at digital as, how do I use digital solutions then to enhance customer experiences, to improve the quality of customer relationships, to improve the quality of dialogue with customers, understanding customers' needs, preferences, and behavior, then all of a sudden it unlocks an almost endless opportunity area.
Yeah, because you're using data, making data-driven decisions
to improve relationships.
Right?
To improve not only individual experiences, but to improve ongoing relationships. And this is something where businesses are also struggling, right? Businesses are designed for sales and service. They're not designed for quality of relationships. So when you think about that, like what measures are there in terms of, sales and service? Great. We know how to measure that in business. How do we measure revenue per customer per year or customer lifetime value? How do we measure customer lifetime value where we say it costs me X to acquire a customer and I can earn this much per year with that customer for the duration of a relationship? So there's customer lifetime value involved, right? If I look at that, then maybe I'm going to take a loss on something because I know that customer is going to stay with me for 25 years, right? I've got this thing going on with ADT, the insurance or the security company right now. It's killing me.
I love this. I'm going to preface this story, which Michael asked me if it was okay to bash this company before we started this over something incredibly petty. And I'm thinking to myself, you're talking to a guy who's been at war with Chili's restaurants for 3 years over towing my car. So yeah. So number one, suck at Chili's. And number two, you have the floor. Please feel free to take ADT to task.
So, well, John knows very well. I bought a house a couple of months ago.
Yes, you did.
And when I moved back from Europe.
Question. He didn't buy a house. You stole a house.
Yeah, I've been known to do that, but
well, you have excellent representation. I'll just say
exactly.
Excellent representation.
So I bought a house, but when I had an apartment for a few months because I wanted time to look for a house and figure out where I was going to live and so on. So I had ADT put the alarm in the apartment, and I said, just FYI, I'll sign the contract, but I'm moving in like anywhere from 3 to 6 months. No problem. We'll take everything with you. No problem. So by the house, they come out and they said, well, you can't use the same system for this house because it requires a partition and you can't do that with the old system. But don't worry, we'll take everything back and you won't have to pay for that old system because we're putting the new system in, more expensive, blah, blah, blah. I said, great, no problem then, right? So now they're trying to charge me for the old system and the new system. And I said, you can't do that. A verbal commitment is legal in the state of Nevada. B, I have like endless emails, text messages, and voicemails saying that you guys are going to, resolve this and you're not going to charge me for this debt and so on. And, they came out to the apartment and uninstalled and took the old system with them. So I no longer have the old system.
Oh, the old Griswold crushed the old car and then bring it around. So you got to take the truckster move.
And yet,
I see it.
And yet they will not agree to forget about the debt of the old system. So for $561, they're going to ruin the relationship with me. And I'm still a customer of the company. And they won't resolve the issue.
And I hope every podcast you ever go on, you tell the story.
Unfortunately, that's only one of these situations where businesses are just stupid. So I wrote an article several years ago, and the title was, "Are Businesses Stupid When It Comes to Customer Relationships?"
Yes.
And the reality is, it's not that people are stupid. It's that the way they measure performance in the business isn't designed to measure the quality of customer relationships. If they had the right measures, then nobody would ever make those kind of decisions. If they said, hey, this guy's going to continue paying us for potentially the rest of his life, why would we screw him for $500 right now? And I guarantee their cost of acquisition of a new customer is probably somewhere between $300 to $600.
Well, I think the difference is you look at certain hospitality companies.
Yeah.
Like I think it's Waldorf Astoria or Ritz. One of them, Ritz has a standard deal where any employee in the house, I think it's like $2,000. Any problem under $2,000 they can solve. There's no questions. There's no run up the ladders. If it's going to be less than $2,000, it makes them be happy. They just fix it.
Yeah, I've had that a number of times.
They're all empowered to make that happen. And I think two things. I think number one, other companies have not gotten on the hospitality bandwagon of understanding that your clients, you need to treat them in a hospitable way. But I think there's also this weird thing that's happened because of social media. I think if you look I think before the rise of social media, if you go back to like 2005, right, when it was just MySpace and everybody was just worried about being in somebody's top 8, that was it. But now everybody has an opinion on everything. And then you see that people are it's just everybody fights about nothing online and this and that. And this value that people now place on being right
Yeah.
has just gotten to be so ridiculous. And, you know, there's times in our business when like an agent that works for us will call and be like, well, this and this and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's the principle thing. I'm like, there is no value in the, don't ever, this is business. There's not principle. It's not principle. It's business. Number one. Number two, the prize for winning an argument with a client is losing a client.
You're losing the relationship. Yeah.
You lose the relationship. And I don't understand why people don't see that. And I think you're going to see these companies that are in non, as you would see, service businesses like the ADTs of the world, where it's like, dude, we're just installing a security system. We're not looking at this as a long-term relationship. You're not going to have a magic moment or a personal touch. I think these companies have got to start, you know, adopting principles like, what is it? Unreasonable Hospitality. If you've ever read that book, which is amazing, right? You've got to start adopting those principles and looking for places within your business that you can excel.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things we just talked about, it's funny. I literally was I was looking for, you know, like sometimes you're looking for something on, especially on your computer and that mass of files, and you find something else that's actually better. You're like, oh my God, I forgot about this. This is better, right? Yeah. So I found a speech that I gave 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I was talking about this on a stage, and I was talking about challenging people for like planning their business. Like, you have a financial plan, you might have a marketing plan. How many of you guys have a customer success plan that like where you lay out exactly what an elite customer experience is?
Yeah.
For that, how many of you guys have that? And I was like, holy crap, that was 7 years ago. And literally as an exercise this week, I did it with my real estate team. I did it with our real estate staff here about what creates that experience for agents. I did it with our title company, the sales guys, what creates a lead experience for the agents that use them, our escrow staff, all of it across the board. Yeah. And we really just came up with a standard of what the bare minimum experience that we're going to tolerate for our clients. And it's really high.
Yeah. Like,
excellence is our standard. That's it. And why don't more companies think like this? Like, is it just not hit them yet? Have they not realized it?
There's a particular, so this is, I have a number of articles that I wrote on this as well. There's an evolution of business models that's happened over the last, you know, however many years. You know, if you look at, if you go back, you know, 100 years in time, most companies were what you would call balance sheet centric. So they were largely production based companies. Yeah. So you're focused on your P&L of the organization as a whole, and in the business is largely reactive. In the, let's say, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, you were getting into these refined product-centric business models where you're largely focused on sales and service of different product categories, and you measure success based on product P&Ls, not necessarily based on a customer. So in businesses that have multiple products, you might have a customer that has, you know, for example, I did a lot of work in the banking industry. So you might have a mortgage with a bank and an auto loan with a bank and a credit card and deposits and all these different things. But most banks were still measuring, and a lot of banks had completely different systems and different databases. Like, they didn't even know that a customer that had a mortgage also had an auto loan.
Oh,
so, you know,
there was no cross-selling.
No, there was nothing, right? And so, you know, when banks were largely product-centric, that was how they measured performance. Then you get into this customer-centric wave of development where they said, hey, we have a customer, and a customer might go across multiple product categories, and we need to start looking at the customer as a whole. How do we deal with customer needs, preferences, and behavior? But largely, the customer-centric world is about event-based activities, right? Buying a car, buying a home. They don't look at the fact that, hey, a person's going to buy a car probably every, let's say, 4 to 7 years for the rest of their life. So I don't want to sell a person just one car or one car loan. I want to sell them all their car loans for the rest of their life, right? And that's a relationship-centric mindset. And it requires everything to change in business. Everything from the organizational structure to the way they develop products, to the way they measure performance, to the way they motivate their staff, and so on. If you took a client team and said, hey, I'm going to measure you based on long-term performance of customer lifetime value, right? Then they wouldn't be screwing me over like one alarm system, right? They would say, this guy is potentially going to pay us for the rest of his life. And if we do a good job, his kids will also pay us, and his neighbors and his friends and everybody else, because he's going to tell people.
But I think companies do that, but only at the critical moments. I think you get transferred to that. I want to cancel.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're going to transfer you over to our lost person.
Exactly.
That is the only person getting graded because you're already a foot out the door.
Yeah.
They're like, can we keep you from walking out?
There's another one. So there's
the quiet walk away that they don't do anything about.
Yeah. All the big consultancies for years were promoting this thing called a save desk, right?
Yeah.
So, and they would run these large data models and say, okay, based on changes in customer behavior, this is the cohort that we believe is going to leave you in the next period of time, and they would say, okay, if it's within 2 months, we need to take action. What I found when we started looking at all of these models is companies spend a massive amount of money cannibalizing their own customers because these models are often wrong. They're predictive models, and they say, these are the customers that are going to leave you. And so what do companies do? They go, oh my God, they're going to leave us. Let's offer them a discount. Let's offer them 2 months for free, or let's give them 6 months for free.
Thanks.
Or let's do this, or let's do that.
And they're the outlier that was perfectly happy anyway.
So the predictive models were largely unprofitable because the customers weren't necessarily with one foot out the door, but they were trying to kind of preempt and save the customer before they left. The ones that already were leaving, well, it's hard to turn them around at that point. Yeah. So some of them at the save desk, they might save them, but because they weren't able to identify and change the root causes why the person was leaving in the first place, usually they gave them a month or two for free, and they hung around, and they still left in 2, 3, or 4 months, right? And so all they did was really spend a bunch of money for nothing, and they still ended up with the same result. And so what we started doing was saying, okay, let's map a customer life cycle and let's figure out where are these changes in customer behavior. If somebody's interacting with your company in a particular way and that starts changing, well, you need to have dialogue. You don't need, some random like, hey, we'll give you 2 months for free. You need to say, hey, what's going on, John? I noticed that your behavior changed, right? It was an online supermarket in Eastern Europe, and they had this thing where they were like, okay, if people don't place an order from us within 5 weeks, then we know that they're out the door and they're gone. So we should send them all these things. Well, it turned out they were sending all these offers of like 30% off, 40% off, like save offers to people that were on vacation. They went on vacation. They didn't place any online orders for that period of time. And then they come back and they're like, oh yeah, yippee. We got like 30% off of our next order.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, crazy stuff.
And what does that cost? So what can companies do? Like, for example, like with real estate, we are the worst offenders. I mean, not personally. Our company does a good job. My team does a great job.
I've had good experience.
But great. Yeah. Thank you. But what I'm saying is this industry, I think it's something like less than 15% of people use the same realtor twice. Like it's just, less than 15%,
which is insane if you think
it's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. I think the industry is getting better with some of the tech that's being built to hopefully keep people in touch with their clients. I know we've just implemented a brand new, really, really slick CRM design to help our agents do that same thing systematically and using AI the same way. Like, hey, you need to here's your call list for today, and it's not like leads. These are your clients. Yeah, these are people in your sphere. You need to call and touch base with them. Yeah, and I think that's smart, and I think I think that kind of gets to your end point of how to use AI and how it should be being used.
Exactly.
But what can companies do? What should they be doing better right now? Where you're just banging your head against the wall. Like, this is so obvious. What do you?
Okay. So if a product-centric business is focused on all of its product indicators, and the measure of success would be, let's say new customers buying my product, replacing customers that are lost in attrition, and keeping a particular product, a base of customers in my product, that would be like a product-centric business. A customer-centric business, I'm trying to identify particular life events for a customer and say, okay, how can I provide a more complex, holistic solution for this particular life event, right? So somebody that's buying a home isn't just going to deal with the purchase contract, right? They're dealing with all kinds of stuff because they need to move, and they need to buy new furniture, and they need to, choose all this thing, choose a school, and, all these different things. So if you're looking at it as an event and providing a more holistic, complex solution, that would be another one. If I'm looking at it from a relationship-centric standpoint, the most valuable thing that I can possibly have is contact and dialogue with my customer, right? So years ago, I did a project with BNP Paribas. It's one of the top 10 banks in the world. And we were with their management team for largely the large part of Europe, right? And one of the ladies that was in there was the head of their CRM systems for the European Bank, which is the most of European Union. And she came up and she said, "Oh, I want to talk to you when we have a break, because we have this algorithm that we've been working on, and I'd like your opinion on it."
Like, okay, here we go.
I said, "All right, great. Let's do this, right?" So on a break, we sat down and we started talking about it, and she said, our thing is we want to attack this idea that people will buy a car and keep it until they finish paying off their car loan, because not everybody waits until they're done with their car loan to buy their next car. And I was like, oh, genius, right?
Yeah.
So she said, our job is to figure out, when we can start offering people a new car loan and all this stuff, because they don't always wait until the end.
No.
So we don't always know. And she said, so we've been working for a year and a half on this algorithm, and we've looked at behavior of different income segments, like urban and rural. We've looked at different education levels, we've looked at different price points, we've looked at all these different things, and we've come up with an algorithm that we've had about a 29% hit rate on people that are interested when we initiate contact.
It's pretty good.
And I said 29% in CRM circles.
That's pretty good.
Amazing. It's like, side note, most CRM campaigns, if you're getting 1.5 to 2%, you're a god. Right? Which means
especially cold outreach like that. Yeah.
Which means that you're bombarding 98% of your audience with things that are irrelevant and not useful and potentially disturbing.
And they love
but
that.
Hey, that 1.5 to 2%, you're a god.
Yeah.
If you've gotten that level of conversion. So when she said 29%, I was like, you guys are rocking.
Yeah.
However, have you ever thought about asking your customer when they plan on buying their next car? Because you'll likely get 100%, right? And it comes down to this concept. We spend so much time in business in a back room somewhere trying to figure shit out, when all we really have to do is have contact and dialogue with our customers. So if I look at the real estate industry, I would say, okay, how many of those realtors have regular contact and dialogue with their customers? And if they're doing it with, a day runner from the 90s, for the old folks.
Was it day minder? I thought it was day minder.
Or day runner. Was
it day runner?
I don't know.
What was the little books, the throwaway ones?
The day planners or the day? I think it was day runner, wasn't it?
I thought it was day minder.
Okay, I could be wrong.
Agree to disagree.
Well, no,
we'll Google it.
This is our
maybe day runner. You might be
our
right.
50-something mind memories here. Yeah.
Back in '04.
Remember the 90s?
Yeah, there it was. No, I don't really. So there you go.
Oh, the other day I had somebody ask me to send them a fax, and I would be like, well, sure, I'll get right on that. If it was the 90s, I don't happen to have a fax machine.
Let me jump in my time machine and make that happen. Really? Send you? What country were they calling from?
No, it's the medical system here. Like, you can't get a referral from one doctor to another unless they receive a fax.
That's just
and they said, can you fax that to us?
That's so insane.
Sorry.
That's so insane. That's so
I could drive it over to you easier than I could fax it to you at this point.
Yeah, exactly. That's so insane.
So, yeah. So going back to one thing. So I mentioned that thing about digital, the digital transformation, and saying that companies started out by looking at the efficiencies and cost cutting side of it. And then they finally started saying, okay, now how do we use this to improve the quality of customer contacts, the quality of customer experiences, and the quality of customer relationships? And that's where they unlocked this, unlimited potential. Not all companies have done this, but the ones that have are enjoying
I can tell we have in a big way.
Well, and the ones that have are enjoying it, right? I get a lot of times I get companies that are like, oh, so I did a thing for one of the universities here, and it was a strategic planning session, and management, they were great, and they were like, well, we are so relationship centric, and I was like, okay, yeah, let me ask you a question. How do you plan your budget? And they were like, oh shit. Their budget is like purely product centric. It's based on like the education lines and everything. Yeah. And so, a lot of times in business, we believe, and there's a huge lag between management and shareholders, right? So you're management shareholder, you want to believe that your organization is customer centric, relationship centric, and so on. But when it gets down to the people that are doing all the work, they're largely, in most companies, they're managed by product centric or even balance sheet centric indicators, right? They're following that old budget and so on. So why do we think that they're going to find, an empathetic response to a customer that's having an issue when their bonus comes from, I used to say in banks, I could be the most customer centric person in a bank branch, but if I get my bonus based on the number of credit cards sold, then every person walking through that door is a potential card holder, right? So what I want to segue with, if we're following the lingo,
that's it. Segue
from the digital transformation thing to the AI space. Companies are making the same mistake, right? They're saying, like, how do I use AI to reduce costs? Mm-hmm. And what they should be saying is, if my end user is a human, how do I use AI to improve the quality of customer contacts, customer experiences, and customer relationships? And largely, that's not going to happen with an AI agent interacting directly with the customer.
No.
Because AI struggles with it. So if we look at the way that our brains developed as humans, and if we look at human decisioning, our brains developed from the primitive to the emotional to the rational. And most of human decisioning happens.
Some of them did.
Yeah. Some of them didn't get there, right?
Some of them not quite all the way through that.
But largely human decisioning is dominated in the primitive and the emotional, right? So does it satisfy my emotional needs? Am I going to feel good about this? Does it represent a threat to me? Do I feel threatened? I mean, we've all had that feeling when you're going to buy something, at Best Buy or somewhere, and you're like, I don't know, I don't believe this guy.
Yeah.
I don't trust this guy. Right. That's that gut feeling. That's the primitive brain going like, no, this is risky. Don't trust this guy. Right. So that's human decisioning is largely dominated by the primitive and the emotional, not the rational. Because we can find a million rational reasons to trust that guy.
Sure.
But if I got that gut feeling,
you laugh. I won't. I'm at a point now where I am. Well, part of it's my choice, and part of it's I promised I wouldn't do it again. I'm not allowed to do business with people unless my wife gets a look at them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've had 2 deals in my life go south to the tune of 7 figures. Right,
Yeah.
7 figures or north of that went south.
Yeah.
And both times my wife was like, "Do not do this." Like, just got a vibe off them and was like, "Don't do it."
It's amazing how accurate our instincts are.
2 times, and both times she was right. And I was like, so from now on, it's like anybody I want to do anything with.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to meet my wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she's got to get a look at you.
We can tell ourselves a great story, and you can use the rational to convince yourself in all kinds of different ways, but you still won't feel good about it because your primitive brain's still going like, I don't know. I don't like this guy.
Yeah. Something about it.
So if we look at the way that AI is developing from the rational and it struggles. It struggles with social context. It struggles with emotional reasoning. It struggles with nuance. All of those things that are important to us as a human end user, right? So if I'm online and I'm dealing with, how often do we get what we want, when you're talking to a bot somewhere,
Never.
right? I mean, how often are we just like live agent,
representative.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you tell me a little bit about what you need? I need to talk to a human because you're not a human.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where we go because we don't, who has time for that?
No.
Right. It's not our job to train the models. Right?
It's not there. It's not there yet.
So, and the problem is it's not that, AI is not going to take over anything in the next little bit. Right. So but it struggles with context, nuance, and emotional reasoning. And unfortunately, as end users that are human, we need an empathetic response.
Yeah.
Right. We need somebody that's going to go like, oh God, I'm sorry that happened. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And unfortunately, a lot of the cost cutting stuff has driven things to be moved offshore, right? So this has been happening for years. Well, when we get to that agent in the Philippines or in India or somewhere else that we're talking to, we don't understand them, but also they're so dominated by the rules that have been created for them that
they might as well be a robot.
They're unable to be empathetic. Yeah. They're unable to say, hey, listen, I'm sorry that happened to you. Give me a minute. I'm going to see what I can do.
Yeah. No,
right?
It's our policy
because they
is
have
X.
in their rules. And
Policy is X.
Yeah. And even Amazon now, you get on their chat thing. It's useless.
And some of them have gotten away from even having anything. So Meta.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I was doing, we were doing.
Good luck talking to a human.
No. There's no talking to nobody. So Meta, listen to this. So you talk about how mad you are. So Meta, whatever, we spent a lot of money on ads with Meta, whatever. And I realized that, we loaded an incorrect account, an older account, right, with $985.
Yep.
So I went through and trying to transfer that $985 to somebody else. And all of a sudden the account just goes, it disappears into ether.
Yeah.
There's no phone number. There's no email. There's no nothing. If you can't find their little help thing, there's no tickets. You're just gone.
Yeah.
So after fighting, I ended up having to charge it back through Chase. I'm like, have you talked to anybody? There's no way to talk to anybody.
Please help.
It doesn't exist. I'm talking to you.
If you can tell me who to talk to.
I tell you what, if you get somebody over there, you let me know because I can't get anybody.
Yep.
And it's wild. But I think that certain industries like ours, I will say this, is they're doing a really good job of implementing AI to help us increase the customer experience.
Well, there's the secret.
Yeah, because the CRM that like we're using, for example, if you get on with a client, it's recording the call, and before you can hang up, like you hang up the call, and the CRM is popped up an email that it's crafted that summarizes the call you just had. It builds to do. If there's any to-dos you need to do, it puts them in your to-do list.
Yep.
If there's an appointment that got scheduled, it puts it in your calendar.
Yep.
If anything needs to happen, it's there, and you can send the follow-up. And I found in the agents that we have that are using the system is when you're on the phone, you can really listen.
Yep.
Because you're not scribbling. You're not, okay, and what, with one hand over here, because it's just doing it. And then, with me, especially in the sales process, I've always told people be impossible to understand. And why I love this is something I have done for years is if there's any time I have ever with a client, I probably did it with you, if there's ever a deal point that changes or something that's happening with what we're doing that's changing, as soon as I get off the phone, there's a text message or an email that comes behind it. Hey, just to clarify what we just talked about, this is what happened. Yep. And the reason I do that is because in 3 months, I don't want a phone call like, no, that's not what you said. Oh, no. Yeah. Go back to this text on March 27th, buddy. It's right there. Yep. And it just diffuses things very quickly.
It's good form.
And it just diffuses. There's no argument. It just, oh, yep, you're right. And you move on. There's no like that. I know he didn't say that. I know that's not what he said for 3 days as they stew over it. So being the clarity of conversation is really helping our industry a lot and being able to follow up. Yep.
Well, that's the space that businesses should be exploring. So how does AI make humans more efficient, especially in dealing with the end user who's a human? Yeah. Right. So how can we make things more efficient in that sense? How can we reduce back office work? How can we speed up things like, hey, I need to research this for you. If you're a lawyer and you need to go research something, if you have a human doing that, that's going to take hours and hours or days and days, whereas AI can do it in a couple minutes, right? We used to build a lot of these predictive models, not necessarily for the save desk stuff that I was talking about, but in building what we call behavioral turning points, right? So if you have a significant change in behavior and you can map these things out, then we need to have like responses, potential responses. Well, we would have 17 data scientists digging deep in data for months to come up with
pattern recognition in 15 seconds on a giant data set.
Exactly, right? And it's more accurate.
Yeah, way more.
And you don't have to deal with personalities and egos and, and stuff like that. So how can we make it the humans on the front line more efficient, where what businesses are trying to do is say, oh, I'm going to replace this entire call center with AI agents. Well, that's a mistake, right? Because you're never going to have customers on the end going like, thank you for that AI agent who goes, can you tell me, got it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Weird pause.
I didn't get that.
Got it.
No, it's not, maybe in 10 years, maybe it'll be like that. But because AI is developing in that progression from rational to emotional, and our brains develop in a very different way, and human decisioning is dominated by the primitive and the emotional. At
some point they will intersect in a meaningful way, but we ain't there yet.
But right now, an AI agent is not going to replace a human that can provide an empathetic and understanding response and say, hey, that happened to me one time. Let me see what I can do, right? And until we redesign the processes so they're not so rigid that the guy in the Philippines or India, they're not bad people. No, they have feelings too, and they have the capacity to be empathetic. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I do feel sorry for a lot of the outsourcers we used to get. I get hit up every day from at least one of them like, hey, sir, do you have any work? And it was like, no, because what we used to wait for you through Upwork to do for 3 days is now getting done in 10 seconds by, one of our GPTs that we have programmed to do what we needed you to do. So I think it's definitely going to hit the third world harder than it'll hit America, but I mean, it's definitely coming. I don't know what. Yeah, I tell my kids, I think the biggest commodity skill you're going to see out of somebody is the ability to look across the table and connect one-on-one with another human being. And move them in a way that makes them feel seen and heard. Because I think if you look at this generation of kids, they're all head down on the phone. So I'm like, so many of them are not going to have that skill.
Oh yeah.
And if you have that skill, you're going to be able to write your ticket. I mean, hopefully he's going to Harvard, so that'll help too. But if you have that skill where you can connect with people, I think it's going to be that's going to be invaluable. Yeah.
So I had a lunch with my banker a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I have a new analyst. He's just graduated USC, and would you mind if he comes to lunch with us? I said, yeah, sure, whatever. So we ended up having lunch. Great kid. Great kid. Wasn't in his phone for a second the entire lunch. Made valuable conversation, connected, and everything. Afterwards, I said, he's going to go far.
Yeah.
He's going to go really far.
Going to be a star.
He's not on his phone. He's not nervous. He's not socially awkward. He's going to do fantastic.
Well, let's throw our tinfoil hats on. What should we be worried about?
Well, I think the biggest issue, and this is what I'm writing a book on right now, is the biggest issue for business is going to be their ability to adapt. And there's actually 4 key components of that businesses are struggling with largely. If you look at all of the major problems of business adopting or extracting some of the benefits of AI or technology or whatever, it largely comes down to their inability to guide change at a speed that's consistent with the speed of changing needs, preferences, and behavior of customers, right? So now we'll throw into it the speed of development of AI and all these new opportunities coming up. Businesses can't keep up, and they can't keep up in these 4 categories. So one of them is the organizational models don't work, right? So the organizational model, which an organizational model is the structure. So how teams are structured in an organization, the management model, how decisions are taken and how resources are allocated, whether it's money or people or whatever. And the third component of an organizational model is how we measure performance, right? So the model itself is broken. The model itself is designed on classical management theory, which is from 100 years ago. And the world, unfortunately, has changed a little bit.
Yeah. We're no longer building, Standard Oil is no longer canning those products on the line.
Ford is long, Henry's long gone. So, the ideas that were very relevant and valid during that development period are no longer relevant for today.
Yeah.
And they're largely not relevant because of the speed required of change. So what was designed for stability in production environments is now rigidity in a business environment today, because we need business to be responsive and adaptive. So that's first category then, is organizational models, how businesses are organized, how performance is measured, how decisions are taken, and so on. And that's a problem. The second area is corporate culture. So if you look at that evolution of business models, the balance sheet centric organizations were largely authoritarian. They were largely hierarchical and directive.
Sure.
And decisions trickled down from the top, and nobody took initiative because I don't want to do something that's going to make the boss man mad, or whatever. Product-centric organizations became more matrix-type organizations, multiple reporting lines, the official and the unofficial reporting, and so on. Customer-centric organizations become more like satellites, right? You have these little event-driven hubs where people are trying to create value, and they're more value-driven in terms of how do we enhance value in these customer events, and so on. Relationship-centric organizations are like a network of teams. So if you look at the way Facebook is organized as opposed to, say, Microsoft, Microsoft is an adapted hierarchy where there's lots of scandal and conflict and competition in the organization, where Facebook is a network of teams, largely where people are trying to understand, how is what I do going to affect another team over there, and how can we benefit from each other so that, we're not duplicating things and creating inefficient scenarios and so on. You walk into, I've walked into pretty much, I don't know, let me be bold and say, largely 2/3 of the companies that I walked into as a consultant had just massive amounts of duplicated efforts, where you've got teams
and they had no idea.
Teams doing the exact same thing. And you're like, hey, guys, did you realize that you're doing 70% the same thing that this team over here is doing? No, ours is different. Ours is better, right? Because they're designed for conflict.
Yeah.
And they're designed for competition. They're not designed to be a collaborative environment. So the second kind of major zone of corporate culture is this shift from working in directive environments to collaborative environments. We need people to share and benefit from each other if they want to move quickly. You can't change an organization quickly if you have people competing with each other and, that guy did something stupid.
Well,
you want to throw him under the bus because, he did something
You want to go
stupid.
fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together.
Exactly. So that's the second one. The third one, everybody gets mad at me when I start talking about this, but the third one is leadership. Unfortunately, the majority of people that are in leadership positions are not leaders. They could be good managers, but they're managing with power and authority. They're not managing with example and guidance and motivation and mentoring.
They're not inspiring.
Yeah, and they're not inspiring, right?
Yeah.
So if you were going to create a portrait of a leader, we need to move from the person that's an authoritarian, directive type person telling people what to do, and we need to move to an inspirational guide, right? Somebody that's saying like, hey, you can do this. Somebody that's grouping people together and saying like, go guys, let's go.
Isn't it funny how the world thinks Steve Jobs was a super inspirational dude, but he was just an absolute tyrant.
Yeah.
Just an absolute tyrant.
However, there's one thing that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard people saying he was an asshole, but as soon as somebody was on track, he let them go, right? He let them
just do their thing.
You let them roll and do their thing. And so that's something that, one of the things I always talk about is there's this leadership kind of range of styles. There's the ones that are largely authoritarian that lead like a government, right? So there's rules and standards, and I need to patrol and punish and so on. And there's people that are more like a religious leader, where it's inspirational guidance, and I need to get people to behave because they want to behave that way, and they're going to group together because they want to group together, and so on. Well, if there's a fire, you can't be an inspirational guide. You need to sit down and say, hey, get the hose. Yep. We're going over there, right? And so a leader needs to have the full range of abilities and the skill set, but you need to know when to use it as well. So there's an old, it's called situational leadership, where they talk about, using different skill sets based on different situations and the different audience that you have and so on. But largely, people that are in leadership positions today, they're largely managers. They're not necessarily coaches and mentors and people that are guiding things and so on. And when we move from a hierarchical directive structure to a network of teams, there's no longer that authority and power to manage with. You can't just walk in and threaten to fire a whole team because you don't have that, right?
Yeah, you don't have it.
And that team is probably a vital piece of what's happening in that network of teams. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's the third one, is the approach to leadership. And then the fourth one is the approach to change, which is the more you try to manage change, the less manageable it becomes. So unfortunately, the businesses need to look at, how do we create an environment that's conducive to change? And in most cases, and I'll use an old Russian phrase, "Initiativa naказуем," right? It means that we punish initiative. Right, so that was an old Soviet rule, right? We don't want your initiative.
No,
follow the rules.
Just do your job.
Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't create any ripples in the
and that's it,
in our reality or whatever. So initiativa naказуем. It was like the whole idea of like, just don't shut up. Like don't bring that up, because if you bring it up, somebody's going to tell you to do it, and if it fails, you're going to get fired.
We're all working, and that's it,
and now we're all working and so on. So that kind of culture doesn't work anymore. We need a culture where people don't feel threatened. They can bring up an idea. Somebody says, hey, you know what? That's a good idea. Go try it out. And if they fail quickly and efficiently, and we wipe it under the table. So you asked me about Marge in accounting.
Yeah.
Let me.
This is the wrap. This is the wrap up. Here we go. Bring it home. Bring it back. Look at that, man.
We're coming back.
This dude's been on stage before. You can tell. That's a wrap up.
So you asked me about Marge in accounting. So there's probably a lot of Marges in accountings around most companies.
It's a very accounting type name.
Yeah, and there's the official way to guide change in an organization. And the official way is you go through all these. John Kotter, who was a well-known strategist, they still teach him in business school and so on. You've got these 8 steps of guiding change in an organization. You're building your case, and you're promoting, and you're identifying the people that are on board, and building your coalition, and piloting things, and celebrating your successes, and driving things to a scale and so on. And that works great. However, humans don't like change.
Yeah.
So we're going to resist things, and there's going to be large portions of organizations that resist change. And so when that happens, we need a different approach. And this is where we come to Michael Ruckman's old potato, right? So this is the thing that I thought of, and it just
it's weird. I used to be in a college band called that same name, Michael Ruckman's old potato. That was the name of our band. It was really weird.
So it's funny because
I never put two and two together till right now.
I still have not come up with a better way to explain this. But think about this: so you got a potato, and you forgot about it in your cupboard, and you come back to it in like a month. What do you find?
It's fine. It's grown.
It's growing. There's some little stuff growing on it, little white things. Maybe one of them sprouted out a little bit, but you can still kind of pick them out, and it's still a potato. You could still eat it if you cut enough off of it, right? Let's take the same potato and say that you forgot about it for like 6 months, and you come back. Nobody paid attention to it. Now what do you find?
I've never had a 6-month potato. I don't know.
It's not a potato anymore. Like, it is transformed, and it's something completely different. And you're not going to eat it. You're not going to cut stuff out of it. Whatever. So what happens is a lot of change happens organically, and a lot of change, if it goes unnoticed, we'll find the things that are successful, and we'll make them more successful, and we'll find the things that are unsuccessful, and we can just pick them out and get rid of them before anybody notices about it. So what I often say is, in change projects, you've got the public project, the thing that you've publicized in the organization and promoted, like, we're going north, and everybody's on board, right? And everybody's on board publicly, but there's a lot of people resisting and even sabotaging behind the scenes. And then you've got other things that you're doing where you're launching some little pilot projects and nobody really notices that they're happening. And the ones that are unsuccessful, we pick them out and bury them.
That's it.
And nobody
even knows it happened.
And the ones that are successful,
hey, this is maybe working over here.
We add to them.
Yeah.
Give them more budget, give them more people, give them more whatever. And when it's a success that nobody can dispute anymore, then all of a sudden there's no resistance because nobody can argue with it, right? It's already generating money.
So the big grand announcement is the wrong way to go. It's the little.
Well, you need both, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
you need to look over here so you don't see what's going on over here.
Yeah. So you need people to like let them go resist over there.
Yeah.
And so on. But I'll tell you, out of all the projects I've had in my career, some of the most successful ones were ones that started as a little nubbin in a potato. They were successful and they grew and we fed them and they went out.
And that's where it went.
And a lot of those are the ones that don't require a lot of investment. There was a project that I did with a bank in Russia. And we said, we went in and they said, we've got the most advanced CRM system in Eastern Europe. And I said, great, you guys are awesome. This is great. And so we went in and did an audit of the system. They had 16 different databases and 42 different front ends, and none of them were integrated. And I said, boy, what? How could you call this a CRM system? It's a park. It's like a parking lot of different systems. And so we went through this exercise it's called master data management. And you take a section of the data from different databases and combine it and so on. And there were 16 different versions of me. And some of them I was rich and other ones I was poor. And some of them I was an employee and other ones I wasn't an employee and, and so on. So I was 16 different people according to their CRM system. And it was wild. And so in the end, they said, okay, it's going to cost us $35 million to integrate everything. And there's nobody that's willing to sign off on that budget. So we're done. And at that point, I had a development budget that the CEO had given me. And I said, okay, listen, I'm going to find a team. So we found a team. There were 8 people. And I gave them $50,000. And I negotiated with a company to give them a free license for a year. And I said, you guys have a year to create value. Salaries are paid for. You got $50,000 to spend. You got a free license. You have a year to create value.
Go get it.
They went out in 3 months and created enough value, and they decided that they were going to work in 3-month cycles. They were working in what they call sprints. So they had 2-week sprints, and they were working in 3-month cycles. So within 3 months, they needed to have return on investment. They worked for 5 years. They spent over $50 million, but they were only in the red for the first $50,000 that I gave them.
And that was it.
After that, they were completely self-financing. And they were driven by that. They were driven by we create value, and that value finances our next stage of development.
Because that was the mission statement.
Because that was the mission.
Well, dude, when's the book going to come out?
Hopefully I'll be done with the writing by the end of the year, and then you know how it goes.
So if it's not a big publisher, we'll see this in 8 to 12 years.
Exactly. Now you know how it goes. It's another 6 to 8 months after that to get it published.
A little longer than that, depending on the publisher, depending on the season in which they want to drop it.
Exactly.
So, it depends. So anyway, we can talk about that up there. Well, guys, thank you, Michael. If they want to find you, how do they find you?
I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay,
LinkedIn is easy. I'm always on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
Michael Ruckman.
Michael Ruckman. The company's called Senteo, Senteo.net.
Okay. And that's it. Well, thanks for coming in.
Perfect.
Well, guys, if you're listening to that today, man, I would just say this. If you work at a company, be the person that is open to helping drive change because it is coming, whether you like it or not. If you're somebody that out there that is your own boss, whether you are in real estate or insurance or mortgage or whatever it might be, if you're selling something, you're your own boss to that level, focus on relationships. They are the new currency. We'll see you next week. Hey, it's John Gafford from the Escaping the Drift podcast. And big news, my new book, Escaping the Drift, is coming out November the 11th. You can pre-order it right now at thejohngafford.com. There are tons of bonuses, tons of giveaways. Get the book. If you are somebody that feels like you might be drifting along, this is for you. If you know somebody that feels like they might be drifting along, this is for you. Available everywhere, all bookstores, everywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, the whole 9 yards. But pick your copy up right now at thejohngafford.com and get a bunch of the awesome bonuses I've thrown out because I promise you, I put my heart and soul into this thing. I want it to help you change your life. Pick it up everywhere. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Escaping the Drift. Hope you got a bunch out of it, or at least as much as I did out of it. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the show, you can always go over to escapingthedrift.com. You can join our mailing list. But do me a favor, if you wouldn't mind, throw up that 5-star review, give us a share, do something, man. We're here for you. Hopefully you'll be here for us. But anyway, in the meantime, we will see you at the next episode.